is a soft schedule undefeated team. I just think that's ridiculous at this point. And I'll say this about Matt Rule in Nebraska. They were thoroughly surprised the way they played. They thought they'd play better, but Matt Rule had said in his press conference on Monday or Tuesday, I'm not positive when, but anyway, he had already stated that he felt that Indiana was a top 10 team. And he's, stood behind that statement as well, after having played them. So, Nebraska is better than what they showed on the field on Saturday. It was just Indiana's day from start to finish as Indiana started rolling with the opening kickoff and went right down the field on Nebraska and put it in. So let's pay some bills here real quick. Remember, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all things sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. With the largest catalog of odds, everything from football, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA to political props, you can get through Bet Online. And now that the World Series is all settled and who's going to be playing in that with LA and New York, they will start taking their wagers there as well. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker. And if that is not your taste, head on over to the slots where they have over 150 different slot games for you on Bet Online. Head to the website today, get in on all the action with America's trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. And want to thank them for their sponsorship of the Hoosier Football Tailgate here on Believe. Also, would like to also say about our affiliates and what they give us the opportunity to get when you visit them. We do receive some sort of commission. So by all means, when you visit them and you decide to purchase an item from them, you can find all that information on our link tree through our profiles via social media or at HoosierTailgate.com. That's HoosierTailgate.com. You can get all that information there. Let's talk about this game on Saturday and some things that we're going to discuss here in a few minutes as it pertains to Indiana and what they were able to accomplish on Saturday. Because it was truly amazing on what they were able to do. But, it was a thorough and dominating performance by Indiana, near flawless at times. And, but you couldn't believe that they were able to do and move the football as easily as they were against a top tier defense. And so getting out on front was huge, and some key turnovers. They created 5 turnovers, and I said Thursday that turnovers were a must in this ball game, that Indiana needed to create turnovers, and that led to some 28 points off of turnovers. And we talked about how important that was in the goals of for this game on Saturday and all that. It's not to say that some things weren't all rosy on Saturday, as the Hoosiers did lose Curtis Rourke right after the half with a thumb injury, what many would describe as a splitting of the nail, that more importantly led to the what is going to occur now with him being out for this Saturday's game against Washington. Now, having coached quarterbacks, one of the worst things a quarterback can do is hit their thumb on a helmet or any part of the helmet. And usually what that leads to is a very severe jam of the thumb when doing so, because when you come through with the hand, that thumb is normally posted down and out. And if he hits that on a helmet, you can see it's a direct hit in that regard. And I can only summarize from what I saw and interpret what was there on TV. If he split his fingernail, that in itself is very painful because there's a lot of nerve endings in that area of your finger. And it's not a very comfortable thing, especially when you need to put pressure. And that's what you need to be able to do to throw a football is put pressure on. If it had to do with anything else, um, like a jam or something to that effect, I'm sure that thumb is pretty well swollen, and that also probably led to a big part of the decision making. One thing that I haven't heard, and they said that he will return. They didn't provide a timeline because I think it's probably one of those things that's going to be day to day as it pertains to where he's at in that recovery and how well his body adjusts to it. But I did not hear that he had any ligament damage. Because if he had any ligament damage, I guarantee you his season's over. Because it's just not something you can recoup up in the next, 5 weeks of the season. So with that being said, I was so happy to see Taven Jackson in the game Saturday and do what he did. He went 7 for 8. His first two passes were on the money, and one of them was a touchdown on that first drive to Price, I believe. So there's no question Taven Jackson has a lot of natural ability at the quarterback position. And I do believe, and I said this prior to the season starting, that him not having to be thrown to the wolves like he was last year was going to give him time to mature and to learn the system that Coach Cignetti has implemented there under Mike Shanahan and Tino. And I think you can see the confidence in himself when he trotted out on the field to start the second half and how well he did in that regard and led them to 28 points as an offense. So I do and always felt that they had two very capable Big Ten quarterbacks. Taven's situation being that he lacked, some maturity in his decision-making process. And that was probably the difference between him and Curtis Rourke. Because Curtis had about 3 more years of starting on top of that. So the fact that he's been under Tino for already, 7 months coaching, and on top of being able to sit behind Curtis Rourke, learn, watch, and observe, and get feedback on everything from how to prepare, I have no doubt that he will lead this offense because of what this offense is all about for a quarterback, because I think is quarterback friendly. I know that they center the quarterback on all the decision making as it pertains to how they run the ball, a lot of RPOs and things of that magnitude. But I guarantee they'll have a plan for what Taven Jackson does well. And you may see some things that are new in the regard to taking advantage of Taven Jackson's ability behind the center, because he's a kid that can run the football as well. So we'll see what all happens with that. And as I said, I don't doubt for 1 second that he is a very capable quarterback and to be playing Saturday. Also, the Hoosiers open up a 7.5 point favorite. 55.5 is the over and under. I'm surprised a little bit of the line that it hasn't moved higher than that, based upon what they've done to Nebraska. I'm assuming some of that is because of Taven, but you can get all that up to date statistics and analysis for the game Saturday at BetOnline AG. And my guess is that line will move very frequently this week because Jedd Fisch is a very good football coach, very analytical in his approach. They did beat Michigan at home. They lost to, I can't remember. They had a bad loss in there before that, but they are a team that in a lot of ways, they've got a talented quarterback and they got a defense that can really do some damage, as we saw against Northwestern's offense 2 weeks ago prior to Indiana playing Northwestern. So we'll talk about them more as we get to the scouting report part of our weekly breakdown, and that will come on Thursday. And then the last thing here is College Game Day. is coming to Bloomington this week, be on campus. Lee Corso coming home in some respects to Indiana. But it's nice to see the recognition the kids have earned. Big Noon Kickoff was here last week with their number one crew, and now College Game Day is going to be on campus for this game. And the only bad thing is it is a Big Ten network game, and sometimes that College Game Day will go over. So in that regard, outside of that, it's nice to have the recognition that the kids have earned to have some of these sports programming come to the campus. And the Big Noon Kickoff, it was well attended. They had Barstool there last week. So a lot of neat things on that aspect of things when it comes to getting the attention they deserve in that regard. So kudos to them on that. Let's talk a little bit about this game from the statistical analysis standpoint. And as you can see here on the final breakdown, before we get to individual play of the game, is that Indiana thoroughly dominated in all statistical categories there, rolling up 495 yards of total offense, over 280 yards passing, 207 yards rushing. Now, Indiana is probably one of the few teams that has had a over 200-yard rushing game against Nebraska in quite some time. So even that was impressive. As you look down there, they averaged 6.5 yards per run. The defense, I thought, played outstanding again, holding them to over 300 yards, 2.4 yards a rush. They didn't run the ball very well at all, only giving up 70 yards. And part of this is the complementary football that the offense had on that day, that they were scoring, and it put Nebraska into a one-dimensional team. And Indiana was able to take advantage of it. As you can see, 6.5 yards for Indiana, 11.7 average yards per completion. Nebraska was 8.4. Fumbles, Indiana, no fumbles, 2 fumbles for Nebraska, 1 interception that was at the end of the half. Prior to going in, you could really disregard that in that regard, but Indiana's defense garnering 3 interceptions on the day, 5 total takeaways, as they came into that game in a deficit to Nebraska. But now I think that will move them to like plus 7 or 8 on the year. Turnovers there that led to points, that's incorrect. That should be 28. That should be a 28 in that category there, because I know for a fact it was that way in the first half, but they had 28 points off of turnovers on Saturday for a fact. So that needed to be corrected there. And then third down efficiency, Indiana again in the upper 50 percentile on their third down efficiency. Nebraska was at 43%, which isn't really bad. Nebraska had several situations where they were able to move the football at times and had big long drives, but it was yielding nothing. Indiana was either able to get a turnover when it was deep in their territory. Nebraska stalled on drives. They ended up having to go for it on several occasions because they were down behind so much. There's a lot of things there in that game that, I question at times that I'm not so sure that if they would have kicked a field goal at halftime, right there prior to halftime, may create a little bit of a different game in terms of how you may play it. But Indiana gave them no choice in the latter part of that ball game, and mostly through the first half even as well, where Nebraska was forced to go for it because Indiana was in such control of the game, and Nebraska was so far behind. I mean, they were 21 points behind prior to halftime. And it's, when you get that far behind against a great team, the only way you're going to catch up is to try to throw throw the ball and get points off of every drive. And unfortunately for them, they were not able to. Raiola, I told you about him being that he's a young, very talented quarterback that's going to have a great career at Nebraska, but you could see that when you get to him, he can make some very poor decisions throwing the football. Indiana had trouble getting to him because he was elusive enough in that he got the ball away before Indiana could get to him. But when they got pressure on him Saturday, you saw the mistakes that he made with the football, being that he's a young kid that still makes bonehead plays in terms of doing the wrong thing with the football and not the right thing. And that's a huge differential when you talk about a game and its ultimate outcome in that regard. Let's go back down here to some other things on the table. A little bit of individual statistics on the day. Curtis Rourke was 17 of 21, 189, TD, one interception. That one interception was right prior to halftime, if you remember. Very good on his day. I think Indiana completed about 80% of their passes as Taven Jackson came in and went 7 of 8. Justice Ellison had the one mishap where if he had thrown it correctly, it was a touchdown, but he didn't. So he finished at 0-1. But the two quarterbacks combined for 24-30 for 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and two long different chunk plays that they had. And Nebraska only got 1 sack on the day. And you're talking a defensive line that had some men on the front, defensive 4. They only gave up 1 sack. Nebraska, on the other hand, gave up 2. And we talked about Dylan Raiola's statistics. He had 234 yards passing. His longest play from line of scrimmage was only 28 yards. 28 is 44, which is still a respectable 60 some odd percent. So, it wasn't a bad way. But here's where the differential was. And if you're going to be a championship football team, I'm going to tell you this right now. The only way you're going to be a championship football team is you've got to be able to run the football and run it effectively. And in the Big Ten especially, you've got to be able to run the football. And this is where Indiana thoroughly dominated Saturday. 215 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. Nebraska had given up 0 touchdowns prior to this game. They now have 5 rushing touchdowns against them. When you look at this as well, Ellison, 106 yards. He had the big 43-yard gainer. Let's see. Black, Taven got in on 21 yards on a couple plays. Elijah Green got in late and had the 1 touchdown run. And then Lawton, his statistics, I think this is his, even though that says McDaniel, but Lawton had 64 yards as well and 1 TD. But again, Indiana at the back and the running back position is thoroughly loaded when it comes to being able to put out 1 of 4 different guys out there to be successful. In the receiving game, again, this Thomas Fadone is, I think that was the tight end number 24. He did have a pretty good day. He's going to be a great player in the Big Ten. He had 91 yards on the day, but Indiana, again, spreading the ball out amongst multiple players. E.J. Williams had a big grab that garnered 12 yards on a play. Surratt, what can you say about him? And Miles Cross, they both, again, dominant days at the wide receiver position, both getting up 65 yards. Miles Price, again, another solid day with a touchdown. Horton had 4 grabs at 21 yards. And again, I think he's going to start getting targeted more because of what defenses are going to try to do. And then Kobe come in on 1 play and grabbed a nice grab. So again, well-rounded approach offensively for Indiana. And then defensively, let's get down here a little bit if I can. Oops, not giving me what I want. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see if I get it on this one. No, thought it was again. Aiden Fisher led the there we go. Led the defense again on Saturday in total tackles with 11. Pons came in with a total of 7 on the day, 6 solos. He played very well. Walker came back again, playing very, very good. Forced fumble on the day. 1 quarterback hurry. Carr, all of them had great days on it. The big interception by Alsbury on the first drive of the second half, where Nebraska drove it down the field, and he makes a great play and turns it the other way, and that ultimately was a 14-point turnaround in that game. And then you see down here a little bit some of the sacks that Kamara got, and again, just a total thorough domination of Nebraska on Saturday, that Indiana was able to do a lot of good things, was able to take advantage of a lot of different aspects of that game. And there was a lot of big plays, but the biggest thing about that game on Saturday was the fact that Indiana was able to rally behind Taven Jackson in his first true meaningful minutes in a game. He had played in some games, and played significant snaps, but this was the first true test for the young man coming off the bench with a lead, which makes it a lot easier to assume things. But, if you can't go out there and move the football, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a problem, but they were able to move the football just as well as they were prior to Curtis getting hurt. So I'm very optimistic about what Taven Jackson brings to the table. I've always liked the kid ever since his high school days. I watched him play multiple times in my other duties, broadcasting high school football. And he is a real true talent that has a lot of ability. Now, we all know that his biggest hangup has been his mental preparation and some of the things that he does on the field that quarterbacks can't do. And I think that's where he's going to grow, has grown this season. And it was evident on Saturday. The throw to Elijah Surratt on the fade route into the corner of the end zone, that was ridiculous. I mean, he laid it nowhere. I mean, nobody's going to catch that unless the Indiana's receiver, which Surratt did. But the throw and how he put it there right where it needed to be was unbelievable. And that's the one thing that I've noticed. And just like Curtis did on several back shoulder throws to Surratt that they do down the field, it's just, what is a defense to do? Those are tough things to defend against. Those back shoulder throws are very tough and almost impossible to defend against. So I'm very optimistic of what all this brings to the table for Indiana coming into Saturday's game against Washington. But it's going to be a heck of a game. It's sold out. The Memorial Stadium is sold out again on Saturday for this game, which I think is a huge accomplishment as well. The crowd Saturday was phenomenal. It was an amazing sight to see and hear Urban Meyer talk about it from his perspective. He was in awe of it. So he had a lot of complimentary things to talk about his belief in Indiana and what they're doing and how they're being coached. And it was very evident that his viewpoint was, they're a team to be to put an eye on because of what they're able to do. So another task, again, like, Coach Signetti would say, that is now in the past. We're here in the present. Be where your feet are, and that's in the present. And your focus is totally on getting better for this week as an individual and as a team. And that's how they approach things because they're very process oriented. That's the one big thing that I've learned from Coach Signetti. A lot of coaches tend to be transactional in their approach. Sometimes that is not the most, I guess you'd say, efficient way to be just a transactional in your approach to coaching, where Kurt is more processed in his approach, in his coaching. Everything is detailed from A to Z, and you do things in a chronological order in the way they see it, and everything they do has an answer for. And that's why I think they've been so good at the places they've been. It's very evident if you look at them and him as a coach at other places, that everything he's done has always been, concept of oriented in his approach to everything, and nothing is transactional for him. So that's one thing to keep in mind with when you see guys coming in that are playing a second team. Look at Terry Jones, number 12, and how he's played the last couple of weeks. The way these kids embrace that type of coaching, where everything is processed and everything they do is from a process perspective, and he does it. And that's the way they coach. All their position coaches are that way. And you can see how well that has led to them being as efficient as they have been on both sides of the ball and in the kicking game. So we'll talk about this Saturday game against Washington Thursday when we go through our scouting report. They are going to be a very good team, even though their record may not totally reflect that overall. But they are a team that will be well coached. They got some big bodies on both sides of the ball. They're a team that just played in the national championship a year ago. And so while a lot of those guys are not a part of this team anymore, there are some that have been through that and understand just what it takes to win. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. It'll be, nose to the grindstone, true Big Ten football. But let's take a look here about what of this game from Saturday in the coach's room, and talk a little bit about what Indiana did Saturday that gave Nebraska fits all day. And it's one of those things that I don't think Nebraska thoroughly had an idea of what to expect from this game on Saturday. Excuse me here while I set some things up. Whoops. But they just couldn't stop Indiana defensively. I mean, there just wasn't a thing that they were going to do that was going to allow them to control the game from that perspective on what Indiana was, wanting to accomplish in this game. And let me do some things here to arrange my screen appropriately. Not that my face in there is important, but hey, never doubt the situation that you can put up there. But Indiana, again, their game plan I thought was well constructed, and I don't think much changes week to week for them. They are what they are. They do things where they change formational looks and bunches and spreads and different motions, but you can see that it's nothing that is over the top. This is the first play of the game where Curtis goes through his reads, and you can see him doing that where, nobody was open. So he's going to check it down here to Ellison. He makes a good solid run for a great pickup of 9 or so yards, toss sweep this is the next big play that they get in this drive. And you can watch this here develop, but you can see how Indiana just overly dominated up front, and the running backs made the offensive linemen right. And that is so key, that the running backs make the offensive line right in that regard. On this play. And this is the end zone of it here. You can see here what Ellison's facing, and you can see that he's going to make this cut where he's making it. And there's nobody there. He breaks one tackle, and next thing you know, he's off to the races. And the guy had angles on him and such, so it wasn't going to be anything where he was going to break it all the way. 4th down and 2. Now, if you want my honest assessment of this situation, and this is what overall changed mindset and what a coach is doing and what he's thinking here. The right thing for this to be said is that you kick the field goal. It's the first drive of the game. You're in field goal range. You never want to put yourself in a position that you're not getting points off of a drive. However, Coach Cignetti is very aggressive, and he has a ton of belief not only in his coaches, but his players. And when these kids see this type of coaching, because in his mind and everything that he's doing, he understands the situation, and he just gives the idea that they're going for it, and the kids rally behind that. And it shows them a lot of trust in not only them, that they're going to be successful, but it ultimately comes back to belief in the coaches and the head coach. So the easy thing here says kick the field goal, but Coach Cignetti said, nope, we're going to go for it. And Nebraska is going to bring some heat, as you can see here, because they're going to bring, let's see, they're bringing this guy and this guy. And so it ends up being a pretty good call, even though that guy dropped out. And he hits, look at this throw by Curtis. It's in a void. And, hey, it gets it before the safety is going to get there. So his delivery and timing on this is impeccable. But what I thought he had is he had Surratt at the top for perhaps a touchdown. But they get they get it, and again, it's a great play. And then the next play, again, superb blocking up front, gets Ellison into the end zone, and Indiana was out to an early lead. So it was and you can see some of the blocking here on a tighter deal. They're running essentially an inside zone play. And again, the blocking, including the wide receivers, is all on point. And Ellison makes everybody right with his cut, and it's 6 points for Indiana. So again, it's a very good point. Now, here is the next drive that they had, and it's 4th and 2. And he said the reason why they didn't kick a field goal here is that he felt that there was a little bit too much of a crosswind that he thought may impose some problems kicking it. Now, they're 4th and 2 here. And again, if I'm Shanahan, I get, he's going to put the ball in Curtis's hand. And Nebraska's going to zone fire it. And what happens is this guy here is unblocked. So there had to be a protection issue here. And the reason why I say that, because the back is checking. So what I think happened here is the right guard is wrong in some respects. And if that's not the case, if the right guard's not wrong, it's the running back who's wrong in this situation, because then he's got the check on that guy. So because of that miss in that instance, it prevents him from seeing him go right down the chute here, because they blow a coverage for a touchdown. And if they get, I think I've got the end zone on this, but Curtis, all he can do here is doing what he's doing, is eat it. Just eat it and line up and, give him the ball and the way you go. But it was one of those things that, and here it is. Yep. This is even better view. So in this situation, Indiana is sliding their protection this way. So either the back is wrong in this regard, because he should be checking, I'm assuming, this cat, but if not, and this is everything's okay, then that is Curtis's guy that he has to beat on the throw, but he doesn't act like it. See, his eyes are to the left. Whoops, I'm sorry. His eyes are to the left on this. But you can see where Price rips it. If he throws it, and what happens is this guy flashes in Curtis's eyes, and it prevents him from seeing Miles down the chute there, because if he would seen him pre-snap and his eyes would have been to the right side here instead of the left, then I think he sees this. But there's a protection bust for the most part here. I can't tell you who, but I just find it hard to believe you've got 6 blockers and they're only rushing 4 and a guy gets free. So something's amiss in this protection. But he sees him, it's a touchdown. But he does the next best thing is you just eat it, don't try to do anything, and go on to play the next play. This is the Nebraska down here looking to tie the game up. This is a 3rd and 1 where Indiana pretty much gobbles it up. Here's the 4th down run. And again, I'm surprised again at even Coach Rule in this situation, because you're down 7-0. You're inside field goal range. I would say you don't want to not come away with points here. And if he kicks and gets the points, it's 7-3, but he decides to go for it. And you're seeing more and more of this in college football based upon analytics and such. But Indiana does a great job on getting a helmet on the football, but he would have had the first down, I think, if they don't fumble. And you can see right here, Walker gets his helmet on the ball. I don't necessarily like how he's tackling here in some regards because he's ducking his head, and I don't like to see him lead with his head, but it ends up dislodging the football there, and Indiana's able to jump on it, and it's a huge turnaround because Indiana then goes on a 75-yard drive, 85-yard drive to go up 14, so it's an essential 14-point turnaround. Again, inside doing well. Very good job by Lawton on this play. And again, Indiana's able to run the football because they can block well on the outside. Here's one of those throws that I was talking about, the back shoulder, and it's impossible to defend. That corner has no prayer in this situation to make this play. And here's a good isolation of it. I mean, he's running with him, and you can see where Curtis throws the ball and how Surratt adjusts to it. This corner is dead to rights. There's no way he can defend against that. None. And it's such a great throw by Curtis. Now, here's the goal line play that they ran. And again, I've talked about Coach Shanahan and his creativity in how he calls plays, especially in the red zone or the score zone, however you want to indicate it. Indiana is a big RPO team. So Curtis has a decision where he can hand it off to him and let the play eat. So he's essentially reading, some of these guys, but because this guy becomes the end man on line of scrimmage, what Indiana has called here, and I'm assuming this is probably scripted up from film study, that Curtis is going to fake it. They're going to run a crack screen out here, and Curtis is going to run like an option, and this guy becomes the pitch guy. It's triple option football that you would see back in the day with wishbone teams or Army or Navy, but Indiana implements it here on the goal line, and it's very creative in how they do this. They've never shown this play, I don't believe, down in the red zone. But Coach Shanahan and the offensive staff have come up with some creative ways to keep defenses off guard. And, again, it's a unique thing here. Curtis's key was the end. He crashes, so he pulls it. And now he's reading outside, and now Indiana's got 3-on-2, and Curtis being the third man in that scenario. And he throws it to his outside, and it's a walk-in touchdown. I mean, again, like I said, it is a triple option type of deal. And here it is again. Ellison, once he knows he's not getting it, he does his job in, at least blocking on this. And you can see Curtis reading that guy, and there you go, pitching it outside to um, Miles, and in the end zone he rocks. So a very great creative call there. Now it's 14-0. This is a great play by the defense, and I've got this on whoops um, on what they do here because they don't fall for this. And Nebraska had shown on tape that they did a pretty good job with misdirections, but these guys over here do a great job of reading, reacting, and not biting on the false keys. And there you go, coming up, making the play. And again, just a huge play on first down as they were trying to get them. This is their touchdown, and I'll tell you this right now. Just tip your hats to them because there's no way this is going to be seen. This guy can barely be seen in that wing position there. And how they block it here, basically, they end up having a hat for a hat and outnumbering Indiana into the boundary. So they you just sometimes have to tip your hat to the offense on a situation like that and understand that they get you on that one. And this is kind of what I was saying here from the end zone. So they're false keying the end here, as you can see. They're false keying him because this guy's going to arc. And so he's arcing for him. He's squeezing for him, and this guy's leading out there on him on the perimeter. So they got everybody blocked. So the guy that has to make the play is the guy that they're basically giving a false key on. And so what happens, and then it's too late because the plays happen, and it's a good design play. So you just tip your hat and say, nice call. This is the drive where, again, he hits Surratt on that behind the shoulder fade. Big run here by Lawton I think this was the big play that he had. But again, Indiana, just look at the guys blocking up front. I mean, they've got them covered up. There's no white peeking. There's a lane there. Now there are guys coming off the edge, and Curtis is able to hold it just enough for that guy to hesitate, but he's not going to make that play. And the safety is the guy that's the running backs guy. But again, the guys on the outside do a good job of misdirecting and then engaging and making blocks down the field. So that's what makes things go well. So they come with a huge blitz, touchdown. And this time, the center, if you watch Kadik here, he's going to block two guys. He's going to first step here and then get this crossing blitz guy. I don't know how he does it, but he actually blocks two in this scenario that ultimately springs the running back, and the running back does a great job of finding a hole and, again, making the offensive lineman right. And this was about time the daggers started sharpening up on the sideline to start driving it into Nebraska's heart. But it was just one of those things where Indiana had an answer for everything. This is a great play here. They're running a counter back into the boundary, and this is a nice call. Bryant brings a corner strike, or brings the linebacker off the edge here, and keeps Walker free, and it's a big loss on first down. So they're starting behind the sticks. Here's the interception. This is just a thing of beauty. Raiola doesn't even see him because he's reading his eyes, and you can see what he's doing here. It's almost like film study paid off, because what Ellsbury's doing is that he sees this coming and he just undercuts the route. And next thing you know, it's going the other way. And this was huge because, again, Indiana gets points off of this. And it's too bad he didn't take it all the way there. That would have been awesome to see. But again, that turnover led to the next thing, because here's when Taven takes over. So they get him out, first play of the game, and he's running an RPO, throwing it into the boundary one-on-one. Whoops, I'm sorry about that. Let's get all this. This is an RPO for him. And so he basically is reading what he's got. He's got one-on-one up at the top, so he's going to take it. And he engages, and boom. And it's out in the flat, and nice run and play there to get it down to the 4. And this is, like I said, this is his first series in the game. And then here's the one that ultimately gets the touchdown. And again, creativity. This is a crack screen because what Surratt's doing, it's man-to-man. And they're just passing it off. And so this guy's coming to cover the slot guy. Surratt sees that, cracks it, and as long as the ball's behind the line of scrimmage, he can do that. He can block that guy. There's no penalty there, and that's what happens. He gets in front, and him by doing that is like 2 people taking 2 for 1. I mean, it was, again, a thing of beauty. Again, this is a time where they got their first sack of the day. Just commended Jonesy got it. And this is, like I said, it started being a situation where Indiana forces, again, here's a bad mistake by Dylan, is what I was saying earlier. Here's that throw. Indiana puts pressure on him, and he comes out, and he's just throwing it. I don't know who he's throwing it to there. He just makes a bad decision, and Indiana picks it, and next thing you know, they got the ball again. And this is the throw for the touchdown by Taven. And watch his delivery here if you can. Look at this delivery. It's nearly flawless in how he does it. He's under pressure, and he just drops a dime into Surratt in the corner. Look at this ball right over the DB's head. Surratt makes a great catch. He's aware of where he's at on the field. He gets one foot in bounds, and that leads to the next touchdown. And that was basically the ball game for the Hoosiers and everything they were able to accomplish on this day. And again, a well orchestrated game plan by the coaches on both sides of the ball. I thought they were very creative on ways that they attacked Nebraska, and it wasn't overly sophisticated. They have a run, they've got these RPOs that they utilize. And I'll say this, RPOs are tough on a defense because it takes away the defense from taking something away, where they could stack the box and shut down the run. And now that if they want to do that, then the quarterback's pulling it and throwing it because they've got an answer with their RPOs. So they scout up the opponent and put packages together that put them in conflict. And that's what he did against Tony White and his defense. And Tony White, the defensive coordinator for Nebraska, he's no slouch as a DC. He's probably one of the better ones in the country as a defensive coordinator. And he put Shanahan and the offensive staff put him in conflict defensively the entire day, where it didn't matter what he called, he was wrong. And when you do that, it's frustrating for those guys, and it forces them to play vanilla because they don't want to potentially give up the big play. And they got Nebraska back on their heels, and they never recovered. And that's ultimately why Indiana dropped 56 on them. And then what Bryant was able to do defensively and, create pressure on Raiola, different blitzes, some run blitz in there that also enabled them to hold Nebraska to that 70-yard mark. Again, just a well-rounded game plan by the coaching staff. That's all you can say. And they've done it now for 7 straight weeks. And there's nothing that leads me to believe that's going to change. Their track record as a staff shows you that. I mean, when they were at James Madison, what they were able to do, again, and I think Sig alluded to this in the press conference today. They've been so dominating in their wins at Nebraska last year. I think he said there were 6 games, maybe more, that came down to them having to take the last drive of the game to score to win. And I thought about that because that was what Indiana's problem was a year ago. When they had the opportunity to win a game, they couldn't do it. And so they lost a lot of one-score games where James Madison was faced with that. and they went down to the field and scored. And that all goes back to how Sig approaches things with his, approach to everything is a process. It's process oriented, and he's got the kids' mindset in the right place. And all I can do is applaud them for it and what they've been able to do thus far. So, big game Saturday against Washington. Right now, Indiana's 7.5-point favorite, 55.5 over and under. Jed Fish will have a great plan for Indiana. He will try to exploit anything defensively that Brian has done. So they'll have to take notice of what they're doing and how they're doing it, because, and again, Washington had a bye this past week. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana. The one thing that throws a curveball at them is now that Taven Jackson's in for Curtis Rourke, that may change what they have done in practice against them defensively. So we'll break all that down on Thursday. Again, remember, Bet Online, the number one source for all things sports wagering, and you can get there at betonline.ag. And I appreciate you again, as always, for joining me here tonight on the Hoosier Football Tailgate. For now, this is the coach, Shannon Griffith, and you've been watching the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on Believe.